All right, it's Joe Casey with the Malibu Guru Podcast, and I'm excited to let you know that we've opened up a new maintenance facility. It's called Casey Aviation Services. It's at the Lufkin Airport. We've hired 3 mechanics, and we're looking to grow. One of the 2 reasons I'm telling you this is that, number one, we'd love to do your annual. We'd love to provide the maintenance on your PA-46. We're a PA-46-centric shop. I mean, all we're working on is PA-46s. We want to be really good at maintenance at the PA-46. And the second reason is if you know a great mechanic, we're hiring. So we're looking for great talent out in the world. So if you know a mechanic that you can bird dog our way, well, you know, there'll be a free lunch coming to you if you'll direct a good mechanic our way. Scott, welcome to the Malibu Guru Podcast.
Glad to be here, Joe.
You know, it's funny because, you know, we base out of Lufkin, but we've based for years out of JSO. We really have 2 places. And JSO, Cherokee County Airport, is one of my favorite airports ever, probably my favorite airport in many ways. It's just because I have such history there. We've got so many friends there. We've been there so long. I bet I've approached runway 14 at Jacksonville 20,000 times. I mean, it's just that's an airport I know so well. And but there was one day that a Meridian guy showed up at JSO, and I was like, how did a Meridian guy get here and didn't know who we were, didn't know? And there you are. You walked into our life, and here was Scott Lee.
Well, I had actually been studying about the Meridian. I just bought it and was doing all the homework I could, and obviously doing that in that search world, found Joe Casey and started reading a few articles and said, hey, that guy's pretty smart. Had a bunch of videos and training things online that I could go to, and seemed like the common title was Joe Casey. So got to a certain article, and it said you were located at Jacksonville, Texas Airport. So I had been flying to Tyler, and I was looking for a turbine mechanic.
Yeah.
And in one of your articles, you had recommended somebody at the Jacksonville Airport, and
let's just go ahead and say it. Charles Crossman with First Line Aero.
First Line Aero.
Yep.
So I noticed. So I went and spoke to Charles, and then obviously had to do, after a year later, I had to do my recurrent training. So I sent you a real long email, and you responded in a timely manner. And this is our second recurrent training that we did today. So there weren't many turbine mechanics. I'm from Houston. You'd think there'd be a ton, but there's really not that work on the Meridian. And,
right.
and I was also very excited to hear that you had opened a shop also. So I have other options now. But my grandkids are in Tyler, so I fly to the Jacksonville Airport, which is in Bullard, Texas, just south of Tyler. So I fly to the Jacksonville Airport, drive about 25 minutes to the house, and Joe used to be there. He still has a presence there, and Charles with First Line Aero is also there.
Yeah, so give a quick shout out to Charles. Charles has First Line Aero, great shop. They do a lot of PA-46s, and really, we hired a guy named Kenneth Hale. Now, Kenneth Hale left First Line Aero, went to another place, and he had left First Line Aero, and then we ended up finding Kenneth. We knew Kenneth from his 7 years that he was at First Line Aero.
And I can promise you, Joe, when I went in for my second annual at First Line Aero, looking around for Kenneth, and he was not there. So I was trying to picture other people. I didn't know the mechanics that well, but I was trying to picture other people that could be Kenneth, and I never found him until I showed up today.
And here he is.
in Lufkin at your new maintenance facility, which everybody, it is clean and first class. And I know he has probably the finest mechanic that Charles had. Yeah,
you know, I'll say this, you know, creating a mechanic and creating a flight instructor are one and the same. And what I mean by that is, like, there are a lot of flight instructors out in the world, but they cannot be a Casey Aviation flight instructor until they've watched us. They know what they're doing. They're PA-46 centric. They're instructors that we have vetted and trained and have watched me. And we think that master to apprentice relationship, where the apprentice watches the master do the work, And when I say master, what I mean is somebody that really just knows what they're doing in that particular field. And it's a time-honored way. I mean, if you become a doctor, you're going to fall up under another doctor and watch that doctor do surgery. If you're a mechanic, you're going to fall up under that master and do that work. If you're a CFI, you're going to hopefully fall up under another CFI that's doing great work. But we just think that master to apprentice relationship is so critical to birthing a great mechanic, CFI, doctor. I don't care what you're doing. And we really owe a lot, if you want to say it right, to Charles Crossman, because Charles is the master as far as doing work under his facility at First Line Aero. And Kenneth learned a gob from Charles. When Kenneth left there, we've inherited a bunch just basically because he was under Charles's wing. So it's important.
I have seen that firsthand with the aviation school. I saw it firsthand today, as there was a recent hire from, I guess you've hired him, correct?
Yeah, Alex. Alex is his name.
To KC Aviation, named Alex, and he flew both flights with Joe and I today and observed from the back seat. And not only was Joe training me, but also Alex today.
There was a couple times, I don't know if you could hear it, where I was speaking to you, but I was speaking to him through you, meaning where I was like, hey, Alex, make sure you're checking this out because I'm about to do whatever. And I wanted him to see the mannerisms and the way I did it, the way I approached that training event. Alex is a guy that flies a Meridian professionally and is a flight instructor. So he's getting into this world, comes with a lot of Meridian experience, which is what I want. I want, when you come, like there's a lot of flight instructors out in the world that have never touched a PA-46, but would love to train in a PA-46, but they can't because they've never done it. And, it's so hard to get that experience. Well, here we got Alex, who's a great guy. I mean, just so impressive. When you meet him personally, he's just an impressive guy. But he's also bringing to the table hundreds and hundreds of hours in a Meridian. So we quickly figured out, okay, this is a CFI. This is a guy we want. And so we began the process of mentoring him. And today, that's exactly right. We think that's super important. So, really, if you think about it, Charles mentored Kenneth. I mentored Alex, and you allowed all this to occur. We just think all that's really important.
It is. And I appreciate it all. And it's nice to know that there's not only a training facility here in Lufkin that I can come to every year, but also 2 maintenance shops, because it's not
That's
hard
right.
to find it. And normally the big iron, they get the slots, and sometimes the PA-46 pilot gets the not so good slots as far as aviation time, maintenance timing.
If you want to be in the ABCF list, in other words, an A, a B shop, a C shop, or a D shop, I guess you could be an F shop, a failure. If you want to be in that top tier, that A list in the PA-46 world of maintenance, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, you need to be PA-46 centric. That's all you do is PA-46s. When you walk in the shop, there's nothing but PA-46s in that shop. And what that means is that everybody in that shop learns the PA-46, and there's another airplane or multiple versions of that airplane in that shop. So a mechanic can look at this and really just figure out, is one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. That's just a kid's song. But you look at 4 Meridians, and one of them's this way and 3 of them are that way. Well, the 3 are probably right and the one's wrong. And you can really quickly, okay, that thing goes this way. And the point that I'm making is that when you're a PA-46 centric shop, and there's 4 or 5 of them that are really good. Malibu Aerospace is really good. Kevin Mead is really good. Sun Aviation is really good. High Performance is really, really good. Those are all.
I'll throw an S-Tech too.
Yeah,
S-Tech, the Piper dealer.
Yeah, there you go. PA-46 centric shops, you know what I'm saying? And we want to be that kind of shop.
And I can attest to what you're saying also, Joe. I was a longtime Bonanza pilot. I owned everything from the turbine Bonanza all the way down to the normally aspirated and everything in between. I had the A36TC. I had the B36TC. I had the A36, and I had the turbine A36. And I would not let anybody work on any of those planes besides David Beaver, who's about to retire. I don't know what he's going to do with his shop, only because he only worked on Bonanzas.
That's right. That's right. And that's right.
And that is something I want to be a part of.
When you get a maintenance facility that's focused on one particular type of series of airplanes, in other words, a Bonanza may work on the A36 and the N35, but it's the family.
Right, correct.
You know what I'm saying? It's a family of airplanes. Same thing with the PA-46. We want to be that shop that is PA-46 centric, is the way I say it. But that's where you get the best stuff. That's where you get the best you get the people that are knowledgeable. You get the most data. It's just a place where people are not focused on TBMs and King Airs and Honda Jets and PC-12s. Oh, and we'll do a PA-46 as well, but you get a PA-46 centric shop. That's the shop we want to be. And we think that there are other great players in this market, and we want to be one of them.
And when you do that, you create PA-46 experts.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's what we are. We think we are in the training world, and what we'd like to, we are rapidly becoming under Kenneth Hale's leadership as the director of maintenance for our company. And I could not be tickled. I'm tickled pink. I could not be happier. It's fabulous. That's for sure. Let's go back into your life for a little bit.
Okay.
When did aviation first? Because I heard about a lot of airplanes just then. And when did this aviation bug first come along?
My dad was an NFL quarterback for 11 years.
You're kidding me.
No, and you can Google him. His name was Jackie Lee. First ever draft pick of the Houston Oilers in 1960.
All right.
So I have an older brother that's 2 years older than me. And when my dad was traded to Kansas City, I was 6 years old. And so I was not in school, but my older brother was. So my dad would take me to practice every day. And, I became the team kid. So I became a huge fan. And my dad and I were around each other all the time. My older brother was always with my mom up in Kansas City. He was getting taken back and forth to school. And so we would come back to Houston quite a bit. We always made our home in Houston, and I always wanted the window seat when we flew commercially. And my dad figured out that I love flying, so that's when the bug first hit. And for my graduation present I went to Texas A&M.
And Eric said, whoop, whoop.
He's over there smiling now.
Yeah, Eric's over there behind the window giving all kind of thumbs up. And
we actually took my graduation present was he would pay for my private pilot's license. And we both started flying together right when I graduated Texas A&M. And matter of fact, I didn't take my first job until about 2 months after graduation. I went every day to get my private pilots, and then the rest was all on me, the instrument ticket and all that. But I'm a big fan of that. The private pilot license, just a license to learn. So you got to go ahead and get your instruments and continue on. And so, that's how I got into aviation. And that was 1987.
Okay.
Starting to feel old now, but
if you are, I have to, and so don't.
Yeah, and like I said, I've owned a lot of airplanes. I have the Meridian now. That's probably going to be the last airplane I ever own.
Okay, I'm write that down. Last air. Okay, I heard it right here. So let's go back to the first airplane you ever owned. What was that?
It was a Cessna 172, and where I took lessons, I figured out I was paying somebody else to rent their airplane, so I went out and bought a 172. I think I was making $19,000 a year as my first job. But at United Flight Systems in Houston, which is a fairly large, still around flight school in North Houston out at Hooks, I took my 172. From there, I was getting these $3,000 or $4,000 checks a month, and my payment was only like $450. So I was loving it. So, and I learning that airplane. So then I went and bought a 152 because I weren't getting the people when they first started.
Right.
Because it rented for just a little bit of money or less than the 172. And then that went so well only because it's a great flight school. And I didn't have to do anything. They'd send it to the maintenance shop. They'd bring it back. They'd get it back online. And then I said, well, you know what? Something else I'm not capturing. I'm not capturing the retract business. So the high performance retract, which I think, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, has to be at least 200 horsepower retractable gear and a variable pitch prop.
That's right.
So I bought a Piper Arrow.
All right.
So I had 3 airplanes on lease back. All the while, I think I got a
You
raise.
entered into a business.
Right. Yeah. I think at this point, I got a raise up to like $22,000.
All right.
So believe me, one winter, it was instrument conditions like for 6 straight weeks. And
no one flew.
No one flew.
And the bank called.
No. But I did owe the flight school, a couple $1,000 because it just happened to go in for their 100 hours. So, but no, in the long run, it turned out great. I ended up selling off those 3 airplanes about 1992 and bought my first A36 Bonanza. And then obviously I did not have that on lease back.
Yeah. And that's a personal airplane. What was your job? I mean, at some point you quit making $17,000 and $19,000 a year.
Well, I was just a trainee at that time. I was industrial sales. I sold bearings, chains, sprockets, motors, everything they call rotating equipment. And I was a 100% commission salesman. So after the training period of about 6 months, I was given accounts and I went outside sales where you start making some better money.
This is a personal use airplane that you're using for just about anything you were able to go. And you began building flight time. You began building experience.
Oh, yes. I've always had a hunt and lease, not a ranch where you lease,
lease for rights to go hunt. Yeah.
600-700 acres a year, and I had some buddies on it. And I would always fly. My son was in kindergarten, had a Dalmatian. We'd pile in that Bonanza, and especially during dove season, we would go every weekend. Yeah. And I had to pick my son up at elementary school one day. He was in kindergarten, and my wife had told me that, no, you can't pick him up. I got to pick him at noon because I want to get down to Beeville in time to hunt dove that evening on Fridays. My wife's like, you can't do that. And I said, I'm going to pick him up for 8 straight weeks at noon. I said, it's kindergarten. And I think they stayed in school till like 2:00.
Yeah.
So I'd go pick him up at noon. And I told them I want him at the front desk every Friday at noon. I'm just going to tell you this right now. And so I did. I picked him up every Friday at noon. And we flew down to Beeville in A36, just a great airplane. And so I've stayed current for 35 years. I've never lost my currency or anything like that. And
you had an A36 the entire time, or did you sell that and buy some other stuff and move around?
I had built a big hangar out at Hooks Airport.
Okay.
And back in the day,
so if you built a big hangar, you started making some money doing something. Is it this bearing and rotating stuff?
Yes, we would do really well.
Good.
Yes, we would. I mean, I would sell, $50,000 $2 bearings in a week, or I'd sell $25,000 bearings. So, I mean, people think of bearings something in your, bicycle car tire or something. No, in industry, they're everywhere, and I would get paid on the account. So when any of my accounts bought something, whether I sold it to them personally or not, or they just called in and spoke to an inside salesperson, it would get billed to my account. So I would get a commission of the gross profit off of every sale.
Yeah.
So I started making pretty good money then when I built the hangar. But at the hangar, I also had 9 offices that were rented and 4 apartments.
Yeah.
And I had like 14 airplanes that paid rent.
So you started getting into real estate? Right. Started doing some stuff?
Well, that was my first big real estate investment. It was a pretty big hangar. I want to say it's probably 120 by 150.
Yeah.
Built it from the ground up and had, like I said, 4 apartments. And what I couldn't believe, though, was a old company, I know you remember, called Cessna Finance.
Yeah.
They came into my office one day and they offered me a $500,000 line of credit. And I didn't have to put up any money. So at that point, since I had the room and the facilities, and this was like, I think in the early 90s when the economy was really bad, but I had some cash and I had this line of credit with Cessna Finance. So I actually went out and bought a C90, and I think I paid less than $200,000 for it. A 72 C90. Engine still had about 1,000 hours on them. Someone picked it up and flew it around to some. I didn't fly it, but I wasn't qualified. But there was a guy there that was, and we went to a few bachelor parties, went to a few places with the wives, but I had it for sale the whole time, and I had it for about 6 or 7 months. I think I sold it for like $290. So I've actually made money in aviation, believe it or not.
Yeah, it sounds like you are just a good trader, as far as that's concerned. You sounds like you know where to go for things that are going to sell and make it happen.
I think it's just knowing your exit strategy. Anytime you buy something of that type of value or that kind of money, you need to know your exit strategy. Who are you going to sell it to? So when the people out there, when you're looking for a plane, always remember that when you're looking for a plane, that you're going to have to sell it someday.
Yeah.
So
I want to go back for just a second to you. You talked about ball bearings and bearings that are happening. You said, think about everything that has bearings. One of the biggest missions of World War II for the B-17 bomber, and that's fairly well written about, was how do we bring the Nazis to their knees? And the answer is that they came up with is we need to bomb their bearing factory.
correct.
And if you can take the ball bearings out of the equation, like literally, well, they can't make ball bearings, then you got a good chance of winning the war because you're going to take them out at the knees.
They can't repair their manufacturing capabilities and they can't build anything. Pretty much.
So bearings, as little as you think of them, a guy like you that's literally building a career off of these bearings. What a brilliant idea! What a brilliant path forward to get into something so elemental as bearings.
I don't want to sound that smart because I got another story for you, Joe.
Go for it. I
got to meet a lot of neat people through my dad's connections, being a NFL quarterback. And I had just graduated college. I had a couple interviews set up, and I was out at this fancy golf course in Houston. And my dad said, "Hey, Scotty, and I used to work on the golf course in the summertime when I wasn't in college and would work the driving range and take people's bags to the range and get tips. And I'd caddy and did a few odds and ends jobs. And one guy saw my work ethic. And my dad said, "Hey, Scotty, this fellow wants to hire you right when you get out of college in about a month." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, what does he do?" My dad said, "I don't know. I think he's in the freight business." And me being just out of college going to freight business, and I'm just smelling diesel fuel. I'm smelling smog coming out of 18-wheelers.
Yeah, not sexy.
I said, "No, I don't want to do that. I'd already interviewed with this company that ended up taking the job. I said, I want to sell bearings." Well, guess who this guy turned out to be?
Who?
I would have been his second salesman ever. Jim Crane, owner of the Houston Astros.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm not that smart. I turned him down to go sell bearings when I literally would have been the second salesman he ever hired, and
could have been on the front end of a good deal.
He turned the company into
something good.
Yeah. So
no doubt about it. Okay, so let's go because you bought a Meridian. Now I will tell you, we did not help you buy this Meridian. You're good. You're very good at buying things, it seems. And we were talking about your Meridian. It's a 2008 Meridian. I would say nothing fancy or sexy about the Meridian other than it's a Meridian, but it's an Aviation Meridian 2008 with Garmin 430s in the panel, STEC 1500 autopilot. There's nothing fancy in there. It's very, very much like it came from the factory.
It's the standard factory Meridian. The only thing it has that most of them don't is a 5-blade prop.
So you got a 5-blade prop, and you have a 200-hour engine.
Yes, sir.
And how did you buy this airplane? Because I'm just telling you right now, there are not very many load time 2008 Aviation Meridians with brand new engine on the front. How did you go about finding this thing? What'd you do?
Well, I started looking about, I'd say, a year before I bought it. So let's say 3 years ago. And first place I'd go is a controller. And I'd check every couple of weeks just to see if anything else hit the market. And well, I hadn't checked in a while, and I was doing a pretty good scan through the controller, and I can look at the front page when I see it and know if that's the one I want or not. And I did not want a Meridian where I had to ever put a new engine in it because I'm already 60 years old, and I figure 10, 12 more years, and I'll be done flying. So I did not want to buy a new engine. Well, I'd come across this one 2008 Meridian. and on the controller. But I don't know if y'all notice on the controller, unless you manually input it, it does not tell you the hours on the engine. It'll tell you the airframe time. I don't know if they've changed that now or not. I haven't looked lately, but I don't think they have.
Right.
So this airplane had, I want to say 2,100 hours on it. So I did not even go to the second page to see the hours because I just assumed it had 2,100 on the engine. I wanted to find something down in the 800-900 hour range.
Right.
In a, say a 08 to 10 model. Well, another month went by and I got back on controller and I saw that same airplane. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go look at the second page. So I hit the second page on the controller and it said 5 since firewall forward full Dallas Airmotive overhaul. I went,
Now
okay.
you got
I
my
thought it was
interest.
priced well at 2,100 hours on the engine. So now I got real anxious and called the broker and S-Tech had it up in Baltimore. And it just so happened that it was, the first question should be, why does this engine only have 5 hours on it? What happened? Well, it was a divorce sale and the non-pilot who was the wife got the airplane in the divorce. And S-Tech was the original seller of the airplane, and they also maintained it for most of its life. And so what had happened is they went to do, it had 2,100 hours, and she just wanted to sell the airplane because it's part of the divorce. She wasn't a pilot. So they did the hot section inspection. They kept on finding other things as they went. And at one point it turned into,
An overhaul.
we might as well just overhaul the whole thing. So
Wow.
I was a beneficiary of that. And
If I could say it, you were a beneficiary of some bad advertising.
controller needs to put the engine hours on the front page.
Whoever sold that airplane should advertise that thing a little bit better because you ended up finding a 5 hour since overhaul with a 5-blade prop sitting on the front. And I won't even say what you sold it for because it doesn't matter. You got a smoking deal. That's the bottom line.
And I had made an offer on it, what I thought was a pretty legitimate offer. And, but it was about 200,000 less than asking price. It wasn't that legitimate, but
And you lowballed them.
But it just so happened, they rejected it. He said, no, we can't take that. So just so happened the day I was rejected online email from the broker, I got the report that the new numbers had just come out in the AOPA as far as valuations.
Right.
I went to the,
and they were starting to go up.
This was COVID.
Yeah.
I went to the 2008 Meridian. It had gone up $195,000 in 1 quarter.
Right.
So I turned around immediately. I didn't tell the people I was buying it from. Turned around immediately and said, I'll let my offer $95,000. And the broker said, I think that'll get it. And I did.
And
I
you
got
did.
it.
And you
so
got
since
it.
it went up 195,000, I went up 95. But that satisfied them.
Yeah, they made them feel good about it, and made you feel great about it.
Right.
I will tell you, in that same time frame, I had a customer of mine that bought a Meridian, and bought it. I want to say it was for $1.4 million, and turned around a year later and sold it for 1.9. He made $500,000 on that. In other words, there's a whole bunch to know. The market drives the pricing, and the point behind the whole thing is that the market can move up and down. And I'm telling you, about a year after COVID, the Meridian prices, everybody wanted to get into a Meridian. The Meridian and the King Air 350 were the two hot cakes on the market. And they just skyrocketed in value, and people did really, really good. Now, if you look at the market today, it's, I would say, fairly flat but high, meaning it's not going up. It's not going up at all, but
it's flat from the higher prices. It's flat, from the higher prices.
It's flat from the higher prices, but it's there's a lot of activity. Things are moving. You know what I'm saying? Their airplanes are not stagnant. There's buyers out there. They're just not paying exorbitant fees for them, or exorbitant rates for them.
To all the folks out there that are listening that want to get in aviation or they just think it's unattainable, I'm a perfect example that over the years through the hangar, and I sold that hangar too for my first big real estate deal. That was a nice lick. That kind of got me into real estate more into real estate. But I think last count, I think I've owned 20 different airplanes, and I have sold every one for more than I ever paid for it. And I only put an engine in one, and that was the one in the flight school, the 172 in the flight school, because they were flying 120 hours a month. So, if you look for deals and you stay diligent about it, it's not like buying a boat. Airplane's going to retain its value. I'm not saying they're a great investment, but they're a way better investment than most material things.
That's exactly. I will tell you, I've never lost value on any airplane I've ever done lots and lots of them, except for one. And I bought a Cirrus one time, and this was right after COVID, and the COVID kind of, if you remember the early days of COVID, like March, COVID happened, and I think I sold this airplane in August or September, and the market really hadn't just taken off, and I was like scared as I could be, and I sold the airplane for like a $50,000 loss. Had I waited 3 months, I'd have made 300,000 or 400,000.
It's like the housing market. We all thought during COVID everything was going to crash, which it did, but it's mind-boggling how the housing market shot through the roof. Nobody anticipated that, or the airplane market.
That's right.
It's because people wanted to get out of the cities, so they weren't locked down as much, buy all these homes in the suburbs.
Yep.
Housing market went crazy. Same thing with airplanes. They did not want to travel commercially. They wanted their own plane, and they were willing to pay for it.
And we're still riding that wave. People are realizing now that flight training is important, and they're realizing that air travel, owning your own airplane and being able to get around is way better. And You're a good example of that, because you got, I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many people have sat in that chair that tell me about how my grandkids are here, and I live there, and this airplane is what gets me back and forth to grandkids. And that's what you do, because your grandkids live in Bullard, Texas, which is very near the Cherokee County Airport. And so that airplane pretty much stays at one of the two places.
Either in Houston or at West Houston or my home. I guess with full disclosure, I'm not real happy about it, that I built a house at Dry Creek Airport with a hangar. They're separate, but it's a grass strip, and I don't know. I've done 2 takeoffs and landings. That's a 3,700 foot, really nice, well maintained grass strip, which is the key. And love the house. My wife loves it, but I'm probably going to move the airplane back to West Houston and maybe buy something a fun little plane to get me back and forth to West Houston, just to commute back and forth. But
a helicopter, you need a helicopter.
I'm
telling you, helicopter. We talk about that. But I will tell you this: Meridians, any of the PA-46 are not great grass airplanes. I'm telling you, I got some people that have done a lot of it, especially people like in England where there's not much paved runways. There's some places around the world where people will put them on grass. Not great. It's
skinny tires.
Skinny tire in the front, low prop clearance. If you are make sure you put a lot of air in your nitrogen in your front strut. It's not a great, but it is great in the sense that 3,700 foot strip's plenty big to be able to do it. But you hit a gopher hole, you do something, you just never know. So I've got people that do it, but you are rolling the dice just a little bit. I have a client that's a very good client of mine that's owns a Matrix, and he has operated that Matrix out of a grass strip for the last 5 years. But that strip is crowned, and he is the one that mows that strip and he knows the strip inside and out. And I think if you do something like that, okay.
Yeah, I think this airport is okay. It is crowned too, and it is mowed about every other day when weather permits. I've only done 2 takeoffs and landings so far. It's just, there are some undulations, not really holes, but the plane, some undulations. It wants to start flying before it's ready. You kind of got it nose heavy. I mean, the nose pulled back off the ground because you might get the weight off the nose wheel. And so you can hit a couple undulations where it kind of wants to start flying, and you got to actually push the nose back on the ground a little bit. So, and the takeoff speed in the Meridian is, normally 85 on a paved strip. But I think that was one of my problems too, is I was getting up to 85 when I know now I can pull it off the ground at 75.
Yeah. Let me jump in here for a training part for people that are going to operate off grass strip. If you look at the Meridian, Jet Prop, Malibu Matrix, any of the PA46s, except for the M600, there is a grass strip provision for the M600, but there's no grass strip provision otherwise, and there is no soft field takeoff procedures listed in the POH. That, like a Cessna, you'd hold the yoke back, add full power, keep the nose well off the runway and let it fly off, and then keep it in ground effect for a soft field takeoff, just like you do it on private or commercial check ride. There's no such provision in the PA46 POH. And one of the things that we've had many accidents that have occurred because people do a soft field takeoff where they hold the yoke back full power, keep the nose off the ground. But the problem is there's so much torque that the torque taking you left that you run out of right pedal if you lift the nose up prior to 70. So the key for anybody listening to this, if you're in a PA46, don't let the nose wheel leave the ground until 70. Then you'll have enough air moving over the rudder to be able to keep that nose wheel going straight. We've had many people take off of a grass strip where they hold the nose back and leave the runway. The nose goes left and they can't stop it from going left, and they run off into whatever's off to the left. We've had many people that take off on icy runways. Do not do a soft field takeoff maneuver on an icy runway. Don't do it. That's bad juju all the way. Well, number one, if it's an icy runway, don't take off anyway, because that's really bad, especially if you've got a crosswind. But I say that to say, if you're going to take a PA46 off of a soft field, do a normal takeoff. That's the bottom line. I'd be 20 degrees of flaps.
I agree. So basically, I have a really nice brand new house that we built from scratch. Started with a napkin to put the plans together, and I have a really nice big 3-car garage in the house portion. So instead of an airplane hangar, I just have a big garage now to keep the 0-turn mower and things like that. So it's not that bad. It's just about a 15-minute commute to West Houston. So
yeah, it sounds like a lovely house. And I think if it were my show and I had that hangar there, I don't know, there might be a game bird, might be a helicopter, might be, I don't know, a Super Cub. I mean, that's where it would be in my house. Tell me this, Scott. You've obviously owned the Meridian now for 2 years. You're flying it a bunch. You said it's the last airplane you'll ever sell for. I assume that means you're enjoying it.
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously, a little more operating costs than any of the Bonanzas that I owned, but the pressurization and getting over the weather and the turbine reliability just means everything to me. And the smoothness of the turbine versus the piston. And I do flights I've got a place up in Maine that I fly to Maine. I go to Arrowhead Stadium quite a bit, to Kansas City, down to the hunting ranch. And to get up high and fast, there's just nothing like it. It's cooler, it's smoother. The reliability is something else. And I think if you can afford it, the turbine's the way to go. I don't think I would go back to a piston, not this late in my flying career.
Right, exactly. It's a wonderful, wonderful magic carpet. That's for sure. All right. Scotty Lee, thank you for joining the Malibu Guru Podcast. Appreciate you coming to us for recurrent training.
You bet.
And we're better for you being here. Thanks a bunch.
And hopefully I'm a better pilot too for being here also. Thank you, Joe.
I hope so too. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate you.
Thank you.